Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final part in my ENA lore series. Now I'm not appearing in an intro this time because frankly there's not much to introduce. This is the final part. It's primarily speculation with alternate theories, but also explaining the power of Potluck. And that's about it. So without further ado, let's get in to the final part. So essentially this part is me addressing all the things I have yet to address. Namely, the power of Potluck, the 5th episode in the ENA series. Now, I initially didn't cover this episode because I didn't quite know what it meant. I initially thought that this episode was talking about things that have yet to happen. Things that would be explained in the next chapter of the game, or maybe the next episode in the series. The reason I thought this was because the very feeling of the episode is different from all the others. There's just something about it that feels strange. However, I figured out exactly where it fits in the ENA timeline. You see, ENA Power of Potluck is actually a prequel. This episode takes place at the very beginning, before ENA ever participated in narcotics. This was her introduction into everything. The episode starts out with ENA ringing a doorbell. Now later in the episode, it is confirmed that ENA and Mooney frequently go to doorbells, ring them, and run away. Now likely when ENA was younger, her manic self would take over, Mooney, and cause her to pull pranks on her neighbors. However, in this instance, ENA actually decided to go inside. Now what I speculate is ENA heard about this house, probably from rumors around the street. This house was likely a place that a lot of drug users in Lima, Peru went to get their stuff. So, filled with curiosity as to what this is, ENA went in. Now throughout the entirety of the episode, ENA apparently is trying to figure out this strange happiness that everyone is feeling.
Excuse my noise. Could you be so generous as to sing me towards the fun?
Now, what I can assume is that this represents the good feelings you get when using drugs and how you can escape from your real-life problems. ENA likely wanted to have this feeling and help deal with her depression and her bipolar disorder with drugs. Hence why she went inside. Now, one very important thing we can notice about ENA in this episode is that her sad self seems to be sort of detached from her, only connected via a thread. Now, what this means is that, as we can see in the episode, this part of her actually sort of pulls the rest of her body, her happy self, along with it, and it seems to be leading the charge. This likely means that before ENA was on narcotics, her sad side likely commanded most of her life, and her happy side was not in control, meaning that she was out of control and she couldn't really control anything she was doing. Now, the first character ENA meets in this area is a strange rabbit lady. Now, we can see from side angles that this lady is segmented into multiple pieces, but from the front, she looks normal. This shows the two-faced nature of the people ENA is getting involved with. Looking at them directly from the front, on the surface, they seem like kind homeowners. But looking at them deeper, you can see that it is all a charade. Now, this rabbit lady gives ENA some sort of show program. This is likely instructions for how ENA can get her first dose. Next, we enter an area with a lot of interconnected pipes. This likely represents the interconnectedness that cartel networks have across the globe. Now, throughout this entire episode, as ENA is searching for this mysterious fun, she still cannot understand it. This likely represents how ENA cannot understand the joy of narcotics until she has experienced it for the first time. Now, ENA eventually enters a room with lots of faces on top of these interconnected pipelines. Now, what this likely represents is the various users of narcotics the cartel produces. And ENA notices that things are getting strange. She thinks that perhaps she might turn back. However, she figures if she goes further, she might be able to understand this strange joy. ENA then moves through a strange void room with seemingly random characters appearing on either side of her. Now, what this represents is ENA's continual descent into the cartel. Likely days worth of trial and error, attempting to find a place to go to get her first dose, as she needs to prove to the cartel that she can be trusted first. These people all end up helping her forward into her eventual addiction. Now, throughout this entire video, ENA has been progressing through acts. Act 1 was just after the rabbit lady with all the interconnected pipes. Act 2 was the room with all the faces, and Act 3 and 4 is in this room with these two characters. They appear to be shadow figures with skeletons behind them. This shows the two-faced nature of people addicted to narcotics. How they appear happy on the outside but are somewhat dead on the inside. Now, Acts 3 and 4 represent ENA meeting these people. Now, Act 3 is ENA finally making it to a place where she can obtain narcotics for the first time, and Act 4 represents her taking it. Now, strangely enough, Act 3 and 4 are titled A Crescendo of a Descent. Now, this is oxymoronic, considering a crescendo is something peaking and a descent is something going down. So, this represents the peak of her descent. This represents ENA's beginning of her addiction and the beginning of her soullessness. Now, ENA notes that she can now understand this strange fun they're experiencing. However, she states that she can't sense any change within her. This shows that while narcotics act as a temporary fix, they do not actually fix her real problems. This is when we move into Act 5. Therapy. Likely after failing to find happiness with narcotics, ENA eventually hooks up with a therapist to actually do therapy sessions. She appears before this therapist irritated because narcotics could not fix what was wrong with her and she feels hopeless. ENA states that while attempting to gratify herself with this joy, aka narcotics, all she got were incomprehensible feelings and this mask.
Every time I acknowledged the enjoyment and pleasure,
and all I got were incomprehensible feelings. And this lousy mask.
Meaning that narcotics are only making things worse for her. It is at this point that she destroys the mask. This likely shows some semblance of control that narcotic gives her, but that semblance of control comes at a cost. And that is the fact that she is broken inside. Now, the therapist states that ENA will not find fun in this way. He says that ENA should instead look for fun and joy in the little moments.
Often, the greatest fun can be found in the little moments.
Now, this is good advice, and it's something that ENA should have taken heed of early. Now, the therapist then says that ENA needs not return here anymore, that this is her resolution. The therapist has very clearly stated to ENA what she must do and how she can get herself out of this situation, and he leaves it to ENA to decide whether or not she wants to actually follow it. We can now see Mooney approach ENA after she comes out of the building. This is when things get a little weird. For one, we can see a strange dinosaur man, which I'll explain in just a moment. Now, Mooney criticizes ENA for coming in here, and it's likely because ENA knows that the narcotics might be able to control Mooney. However, this is eventually proven to not be the case. Now, about that dinosaur guy. Strangely enough, he seems to vomit up some guy which Mooney kills, presumably. This is Mooney making the decision for ENA to not follow the therapist's advice and continue with her own drug usage. For now, Mooney realizes that drugs will actually make Mooney stronger and have more control over ENA. So therefore, we end the power of Potluck with ENA beginning to get addicted to narcotics. And then the rest of the show plays out, and then the game. But now we have plenty of unanswered questions and alternate theories. Now, I cannot cover every single other question in this video, and I cannot cover every single alternate theory out there. There are far too many of both of them. But I can cover some of the main ones. For instance, when, what, where, why, who? Let's answer those. When does this all take place? Well, it's pretty simple. The release dates on the show and the release date of the game all match up with right about when they actually took place. Now what? What is going on? Pretty simply, all of this is a giant metaphor for how addiction can twist and corrupt you. Where is this taking place? In Ukraine and in Peru. More specifically, in Yanakiva, Ukraine, and in Lima, Peru. Why is this all happening? This is all happening because ENA has chosen specifically, rather than to seek help, to try and fix her problems herself using narcotics and feeding her addictions, which only leads to tragedy in the end. And then who are we talking about? Well, of course we're talking about ENA. But what is ENA's real name? Now, this is something we can debate all day on, and we may never have an answer to this for sure, but I do have the most likely option. Now, as I explained before, ENA's name is frequently mispronounced throughout the show and the game, which likely means that her name in real life is frequently mispronounced. Now, what I did is I cross-referenced common female names in Mali, which is where her mother's from, in America, where her dad's from, and in Peru, where she was probably born. You see, a common girl name in Mali is Awa, a common girl name in Peru is Ana, and a common girl name in America is... Now, these are all very similar to each other. And if you look at the Peruvian one, now this could be pretty easily mispronounced. For instance, is it Ana or Ena? You can see where the mispronunciations can come from. So this is likely ENA's name in real life. And it also closely matches her name given in the show, with only one letter being different. So now we have ENA's name figured out. Now, is ENA alive? At the end of Dream Barbecue, she clearly overdosed on narcotics. Now, there's going to be no way we can know if ENA's alive until the next chapter in the game comes out. In the meantime, we can speculate. Alright, so clearly ENA overdosed. But there's two options on what she overdosed on. You see, if she overdosed on ketamine, like I suspected, she's dead. But if she overdosed on an opioid, such as fentanyl, then she could actually be alive. You see, opioids are counteracted by a substance known as Narcan, otherwise known as naloxone. Now, essentially what this is when you take an opioid, it goes directly to the opioid receptors in your brain. Take too much of it, it overloads your system, and you die. However, Narcan is known as the miracle medicine because it can pretty much bring someone back to life if they've taken too much of an opioid. Because essentially what it does is it goes up to your opioid receptors, pulls out the other opioids, and just replaces itself in your brain, negating the effects of the opioid, causing the person to go from a completely comatose, pulseless, breathingless state into alert, functioning, even walking around. So, if ENA did take an opioid, then she could have been revived by Narcan. However, if she did in fact die, her coming back to life could actually mean that maybe she has now woken up in her own dream. She's dead, her body is dead, but her soul is still alive, living out this strange nightmare. Or maybe it connects to a theory which I will explain here in a bit. How old is ENA? The typical age for recruiting into military in Peru is 18. So likely she became a part of Defiant International when she was 18. She was probably in her 20s, thereabouts, when actually going into Ukraine, meaning that she was likely born in the year 2000, putting her roughly around 24 to 25 years old, around ENA Dream Barbecue, aka this year. So this year, she's likely somewhere 24 to 25 years old. Now, is her age relevant? Absolutely not. Is it an interesting question to have an answer to? Yes, it is. Now, what is the Dream Barbecue? Now, we saw in ENA a dancing spatula lady, which I explained represents ENA's hopes and dreams for what she really wanted to be if her addictions had not gotten in her way. Now, one of those things was a chef. Now, likely the Dream Barbecue represents ENA's dream of becoming a chef. However, this dream, as of now, is unobtainable. Who is ENA's boss? This is a very important question. Now, if some of you paid attention and know a lot about ENA, you may have noticed in my video where I talked about the game that I left out a character. Was this guy, Bunreiko Man. Now, this guy attempts to tell ENA in the Purge event area that she shouldn't try to live her life making everyone happy, and also encourages ENA to follow the whistle the same way other people do in this area. Now we can see that he is an Australian man which is being controlled by some sort of dark figure. We can also interestingly see him on posters around Uncanny Streets. I actually theorized that this person is ENA's boss because he also appears on promotional material made for ENA Dream Barbecue. A video showing off some of the music for the Purge event before the game came out features Bunreiko Man laughing. This is the only character in the entirety of the Purge event area to appear in the rest of the game, in the Purge event area, and also on promotional material. It just seems strange that he's given so much attention. I do indeed theorize that this is ENA's boss. Or more specifically, this dark figure is ENA's boss. I think that this Bunreiko Man is the facade the boss puts on for other people. And this shadowy figure is who the boss really is. And this is when my theory gets kind of insane. Because I think that not only is this boss the boss of ENA's company, but is also the kingpin of ENA's cartel. I think this boss knows full well ENA's intent to kill him. And I think this boss actually orchestrated this mission for ENA, and is watching as ENA tries to make her way to him. I think this is a test of loyalty, to see how far ENA is willing to go for the cartel, and possibly enlist her in the highest ranks. Every adventure and everything that has gone on for ENA with this cartel so far could very well have been manipulated by this Bunreiko Man. And on the topic of theories, it's time to get into some of the alternate theories besides my main theory for ENA. Now the first one I think I need to address is the multiple ENA theory. Most people theorize that ENA is actually a species within this strange world.
Shepard, upon greeting ENA, complains of another ENA troublemaker. Does this mean that an ENA in this world is a type of creature?
Now the reason I don't like this theory is because it fails to explain a lot. What does it all mean? Why are there multiple ENAs? What are ENAs? What purpose does this series serve? It fails to explain a lot, and so therefore that's why I didn't include it in my theory. The next theory is the internet theory. This is most notably explained in The Power of Potluck, how everything being interconnected could represent the internet, and ENA's constant pursuit for happiness and joy throughout the show and the game could actually represent our journey through the internet, trying to find happiness and entertainment through it, and could also be a reference to how you shouldn't spend all your time on the internet looking for happiness and should instead enjoy it in the little things in real life. Now this theory is all well and good, but I feel like it's lacking substance. I feel like there's just more to the story than it just being a metaphor for the internet. Next up is everyone's least favorite theory in anything ever, the simulation theory. The theory that this is all just a simulation. That ENA is someone who was kidnapped in some situation or put into some sort of testing area and experimented on mentally. Some sort of in-brain simulation. Maybe used to test interrogation tactics or to find information or whatnot. Now again, everything being a simulation the whole time is a really, really dumb theory. I hate it. Everyone else hates it. It's the worst cop-out in history when a story goes, "It was a dream the whole time," or "It was all just a simulation." There's ways that can be executed well, but in this situation, if that's the case, this would not be executed very well. So, I refuse to believe that the simulation theory is accurate because it's boring and stupid. Next up is the happiness theory, which states that ENA is trying to find happiness throughout all of this, which actually aligns with my theory pretty well, that behind the addiction and behind the illegal activities, ENA is really deep down just looking for happiness and normalcy. Yet the ways she is doing it is actually driving her further into depression. Next up is a bit of an out there theory called the soul theory. This one is my own creation. When ENA dies in Dream Barbecue, I theorize that she comes back to life, either possessing her old body or someone else's or a frickin' robotic endoskeleton, I don't flippin' know, and just goes from there to find her boss regardless. And once she finds her boss, her soul can find peace and she can finally move on to the next life. That's a bit of an out there theory, but you know, with this series, anything can happen. That brings me to the final theory I will mention today, and it applies to every thought process you could have. This theory of my own creation is called the nobody theory. That every single theory about ENA out there now, every single piece of speculation, every single understanding that you could have is all wrong. Every person, including myself, who has tried to explain the lore of ENA is completely and totally wrong. And Joel Gaera knows the real lore behind it. And the real lore is one of two things. Either it's some insane, twisting plot created by Joel Gaera, or it means nothing at all, and we're all theorizing over abstract art. I think the nobody theory, that nobody is correct at all, is actually the most likely theory. If you really step back and look at ENA the way you first ever looked at ENA, when you saw it for the first time, as complete random, nonsensical occurrences that somehow got millions of views. Step back and look at it that way. And in all honesty, any theory could be correct, and any theory could be incorrect. Frankly, there is no knowing. And the only way to know is to see what Joel Gaera and his team will create next. And on that note, we finish off this lore series on ENA. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for coming with me on this journey. This was quite the interesting project to do. This is certainly not what I thought I'd be doing over the summer. But hey, it happened. We just went down a random internet rabbit hole and here we are. Right now I'm working on games like Secrets of the Mimic and Deltarune. Gonna get those episodes out. And also have a couple other interesting videos coming out soon. And then also the Steam Summer Sale. I'm gonna blow all my money on that and just do a crap ton of recording second half of this summer. So stay tuned for a bunch more gaming content coming at ya. We're gonna be taking a break from ENA content for a good long while. Probably we're not gonna do another thing on ENA until the next episode comes out or the next chapter in the game comes out, and that's just fine with me because thinking about this has melted my brain. So regardless, leave a like and subscribe. A lot of interesting content coming in the future. Would really appreciate it if you subscribed. It means a lot and I appreciate it, and it makes me feel good inside. So yes, if you could do that, like, share with your friends and all of that, and I will see you all in the next video. So long.